When I think of kindness, I think of a much deeper relationship to honesty and truth.
You're listening to Channel Kindness Radio.
Hi, I'm Jackie Powell, and you just heard Walt Hopkins, the head coach of the WNBA's New York Liberty. As a specialist in player development with 2 master's degrees that focused on motivation theory and social psychology, Walt oversees everything from refining shot mechanics to building positive relationships. So, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I recently sat down with him to discuss his relationship with his own mental health and how, as a coach, he leads with kindness. So, Walt, take me through what it was like really to realize that you had to make your mental health a priority in your life.
I remember it pretty clearly. I was at Cal, and I was walking to a student tutoring session. I was working with the women's basketball team at the time and doing tutoring, and I'd really been having trouble, like I talked about, with sleep and feeling really low energy, low motivation. And there was a poster on the wall in the student study center that had a bunch of symptoms, and it said, "Are you has your sleep changed? Are you always tired, feeling fatigued, low motivation?" It had 6 or 7 different symptoms, and I'm looking through and I'm looking at all the symptoms. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And I got to all 7 of them. I was yes. And it's in the middle of the poster. It said, "If so, you might be depressed." And I remember at the time thinking, like, why, like, how would that even have happened to me? Like, I've had, issues with feeling sad or down just like anybody else, but I wouldn't have ever thought that I was actually depressed. And so that was the first time that I ever sought out therapy, and that was the beginning of me realizing how much of a difference that could make in my life, and how anyone that I'm close to that starts to struggle with issues that are recognizable as symptoms of depression or of anxiety, the first thought is to try to explain to them my experience, my positive experience with therapy, so that because to go directly at them and try to destigmatize having a therapist and going to see somebody can be difficult. So instead of that, I try to just lead with, my way of destigmatizing is to say, I've done it and it worked and it helped. And for the most part, that's been pretty effective, that people don't feel as judged, and I know from experience that it's hard not to feel that way about yourself, or to be frustrated, or to be upset that, you're a part of this group that theretofore was stigmatized.
This past January, Walt and I connected over a graphic reposted by Channel Kindness on Instagram. The message made both of us feel so seen. And since then, I had been curious about his journey with his own mental health process and the techniques he uses to incorporate mental wellness into his life.
Well, it was a combination. I started antidepressant medication pretty quickly when I got into therapy. They diagnosed me very quickly, and so I started on a lower dose of Prozac and kind of worked my way up, and found a happy place with that, and then moved it down, adjusted the dosage to find the place that was the most positive for me. And I know that different medications work differently for different people. Um, I think that the combination of a few weeks of therapy, it didn't take long, and in conjunction with the antidepressants, I think that just one or the other wouldn't have been as effective. I think that the synergy of the two, and these are professionals who understand that relationship, was really, really probably 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in. I remember feeling a sense of, okay, I'm starting to feel more like myself now. I'm starting to feel, less like this other person that I've been recently. So yeah, I'd say in a month, thereabouts.
Right, right. But how important do you think it is to accept all the different parts of yourself?
Yeah, I think to accept without judgment um, is different than to accept without having a lens for improvement. And I think that's a really important distinction. Accepting without judgment, meaning I'm not a lesser person for feeling this way. But I don't want to continue to feel this way. And so not accepting the continuance of those feelings is different than not accepting yourself for having those feelings. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just, I guess, humanizing everything. These are feelings that humans have. I mean, was there a moment for you, like when you were looking at that sign, it seems like your first reaction was to sort of judge the connection you were making. Oh my gosh, I'm depressed. How did you make it past that judgment and into the clarity?
Well, I might have misrepresented it a little bit because I do think that there was a feeling of relief because I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Mm,
And so seeing that the symptoms matched with something that I knew was known and treatable, I was relieved. I don't think it was until, a little bit after that I started to think, well, what does this mean about me? Because I was so deeply depressed that I was just ecstatic that there was a chance that I could feel better by addressing it. So it was the not knowing that was the worst part. And that was when I was the most judgmental of myself.
right, right. And so, what really, what is your mental health process? What do you do when you know maybe you're not having a great mental health day?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know that there are ways that I can set myself up for success with my mental health, and one of them absolutely is exercise. I notice a massive difference in my ability to focus, the feelings of well-being, um, the lack of irritability when I get a good solid workout in the morning. It can be cardio, it could be stretching, yoga, Pilates, it could be lifting weights, it could be getting on the basketball court, any combination of the above. I really notice a dramatic difference in my mood and my resistance to depressive feelings or anxious feelings. Um, and that resistance is an important piece, I think, because we all have, I'd say for the most part, we all have a tendency to, or a capacity to slip into these things, right? Into these negative thoughts or destructive thoughts. And I think resistance is an important word because it's not something that I've been cured of. It's something that I've learned through diet, sleep, exercise, and reframing the way that I think about things. I can resist it, and I can have a stronger level of control over it. And some of that have come from conversations with therapists. Some of that has come from my own research and what makes me feel good and what doesn't. But I'd say my process, definitely diet, sleep, exercise are at the top of the list. And in addition, social interaction is really meaningful to me.
Right. So when you've noticed that maybe you've worked a lot, maybe you're not getting sleep, is there something else that helps you just relax and reset? Exercise, it is amazing, but I don't know if it helps me relax, or maybe it helps you. I don't know.
It does. But it depends because my process for exercise oftentimes is caffeine. I
Mm,
use caffeine to kind of get me hyped up to exercise because on those days when you wake up and you don't want to do anything, I mean that's like it's strenuous, it's hard, and it's taxing on your nervous system. So there are times when I've had to start exercise with meditation or with some deep breathing, and that kind of calms down and gets me out of sympathetic overdrive, essentially, that I'm in a lot of the time because of caffeine, and because I need to be on for work and for interviews and for, different things that we're doing now. So I would say that meditation and in particular breathing exercises have been really powerful for me, understanding kind of the way that the physical positioning of my body and my breathing affects everything else. My mental processes, the things that hurt on my body, breathing differently, breathing in a more functional way, getting out of like a hyperventilated state into deep breathing, can make a massive difference and kind of get you, like you said, a reset is a great word, that can get you ready for the day, and it can kind of calm your thoughts. And, so you're not always in this, I have to be hyped up, I have to be on mode. You can just relax and kind of find your way.
Right. Do you have any like personal reminders for when you sort of have to like be like, okay, it's time for self-care, or it's time to meditate, or, let's shoot some hoops? What's sort of that, okay, that's what I have to do?
Yeah, I find that it's different, depending on the feeling. Anxiety and depression are very different for me. The way that they manifest, and the things that I need to do to kind of help calm them. I think one that is threaded through both is conversation. When I'm anxious, sometimes hearing myself say what's on my mind helps calm me down, because I realize that it's not accurate. Anxiety and depression, they lie. They're not they're not accurate. Thoughts, most of the time, we fall down these rabbit holes, and my sister calls it cinnamon rolling, and it starts like this, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and I've heard snowballing, and yeah, so it's conversation is a big thing for me, and having people who know kind of how to help me work through my own process. Some close friends, who are really gifted kind of in that regard, that they don't give me advice. They don't, that might push me the other way too. I might be annoyed that I've already thought of that. I don't tell me what, blah, blah, blah. You get in that state. They ask me questions and let me find my way. And I think that's what a good therapist does too, right? I mean, it's kind of the same thing. They don't sit you down and give you all the answers to your problems. They don't necessarily do that. They try to help you find your own way through them.
Something I wanted to understand was this idea of practicing kindness in sports, when a primary goal in professional athletics is to defeat your opponent. How do we reconcile those two ideas? Are they mutually exclusive? According to Walt, no, they aren't at all.
You can be a competitor, and I am, and I care very much about, how I perform and winning. Who doesn't love to win? And I'm crushed by losing. I'm crushed when I don't play well or coach well, or even an interaction with people. If I feel like someone was offended or things like that, I'm very sensitive to those things. But I think that where we make the mistake of thinking that kindness, competitiveness, and fire can't coincide. They can't all be in one person. That you can't. But you can be that, and a motivator and a driver and somebody who pushes the people around you, and do so in a way that doesn't make them feel belittled or less than, or judged. I think giving feedback in a way that isn't, it's more focused on the actual act, the thing that needs to be done, that needs to be done better, without, if you don't infuse that with making it personal about a judgment that you're just not any good at that, like you're terrible at that move, don't ever do it again, do this, versus you can give that same feedback. Hey, that's, you've missed that the last 5 or 6 times you've taken it. Let's try something else. Like let's try X, Y, or Z move or shot or play. I think that when we attach judgment to things, when we attach kind of an emotional response to things, then that's where things can get a little sticky. It's going to happen in pro sports. The stakes are really high. People are fired up. They're competitive. Teammates are going to do it. Coaches are going to do it to teammates. Players do it to players. Refs do it. We do it to refs more than they do it to us, granted. But there are exceptions to that. Sometimes the refs say some stuff that get under your skin. But yeah, I think that as long as you are coming from a position consistently of caring about the person and giving feedback in a way that you clearly are trying to speak to them in a way that they prefer or that they respond better to. I think that showing that you are making a concerted effort to adjust to people and meet them in the middle. I think from a leadership perspective, people are scared to do that a lot of the time. I think they think it needs to be my way or the highway. But I think if you set that tone early, that look, this is collaborative. This isn't about me up here and you down here, and I'm going to keep you down here. I think that you can stay up here because there's a hierarchy in everything we do. We have bosses. There's levels to everything, and that's kind of the order of things, and it tends to work that way. But that doesn't mean that I think that we have to conflate role with value. I think that just because somebody's role is to be a manager or a captain or a starter doesn't mean that they have more value, not only on a human level, but on a team level, than somebody who's the 12th player on the bench, or who's an assistant coach, or who's an assistant coach who sits behind the bench instead of on the front of the bench. The hierarchy is inescapable in the way that society is structured, and that's not going to go away. But people understanding that their value is the same as the person who's on the front of the bench, that the value of the best scorer on the team is the same as the 12th man, 12th woman, best rebounder on the team, so on and so forth, that we all have roles to play and that we're all equally valuable in that. Because without those people at every role, and it's walks of life, it's we could go through this analogy and metaphor and really connect it to pretty much anything that we want to, right? I think that the importance is that we don't confuse those two things. And I think that starts with leadership. It starts with how we communicate with people. And so long as that communication is open and direct and honest, I think that you can establish a culture and relationships with people that are respectful of the hierarchy, but that don't make people feel as though they're less than, because they're not.
Right. And you're empowering people to maybe be brave and step out of their comfort zones. And that doesn't happen without establishing some sort of kind precedent.
We can think of plenty of historical examples, right? From presidents and leaders and dictators and things like that. And you can think of some who did lead with kindness and a care for those around them, and a genuine concern for the people, regardless of where they are on the hierarchy. I think that those are the leaders that we all admire the most. I think those are the leaders who really inspire change in a way that's sustainable. I think they're examples and models for all of us that we can take from those interactions and bring them to our daily lives, and understand, that I don't have to parent my kids necessarily in the way that I was parented, or that, I don't have to coach in the way that I was coached, that essentially I get to see that model of somebody who did it, and who did it in a way that was positive and kind, and without sacrificing holding people accountable. And I think that we're fearful culturally that if I'm nice, then I get stepped on, I get walked on.
What is the difference between niceness and kindness? That's something that I'm constantly trying to pick apart, because you said it. You said, well, there's that stereotype where if you're, generally very nice, you might get stepped on. But that's different from kindness, right? Or is it not? I don't know. I feel like there's a difference.
I feel like we could probably have like an argument about semantics, not an argument, a discussion about semantics, because kindness to me, and this is completely subjective, but kindness to me is a more stable, deeper connection to a set of values. Niceness is more superficial. I think kindness is altruistic. I think niceness can be manipulative. I think it can be self-serving. When I think of kindness, I think of a much deeper relationship to honesty and truth than I do when I think of niceness.
Now, the New York Liberty are one of the youngest teams in the WNBA. With an average age under 24, I wanted to know how Walt plans on creating a culture for younger people that fosters mental wellness and kindness. For Walt, his expectations for the women he coaches are very clear.
I will not accept that. As a leader, I will not accept people mistreating one another and not thinking about one another's feelings. And that, again, it doesn't mean everyone's perfect. It means we care. We try to be that way. And we're human, and there's no getting around the mistakes. There's just not. And I wouldn't think that players are ever going to go out there and play a perfect game. I wouldn't expect people to be perfect to one another, no matter how much they care about one another. The point is that we're always trying to make those adjustments, and we're always trying to be better for one another. And that we're not just stuck in our own feelings, thinking about ourselves. So I would say that laying that foundation early and saying, what I will and won't accept, what we will and won't accept as a staff and as an organization, I think is really important. It goes a long way in terms of, getting that to really come through, shine through, and become a pillar of what we do.
One of the main pillars and missions of Born This Way Foundation and the work we do at Channel Kindness is to show the world how cool kindness is. A question I often consider is how? How do we get there? And how does Walt think we move closer to realizing that goal? How can we make kindness cool? Like when I was growing up, the way I was to people who I was friendly with, they didn't take in the kindness. It was all about the sarcasm. So how do we do that? I mean, for young people, for, people in their 20s and their 30s, millennials, everyone, how do we do that?
It's a pretty deep question. I think the first place my brain goes to is having models who make it cool. I think that if that's our parents or, people in the media or on TV, if it's athletes, people of influence, modeling behavior, when they're already kind of given their cool card, because they're so good at what they do, or because they're really good looking, or they're really smart, or whatever the talent is, or the attribute is, that those people de-incentivize rude behaviors, and they incentivize positive behaviors, not just by modeling, but also by speaking out. I think like what you're talking about with Born This Way Foundation, with Lady Gaga, the way that, the things that she's said and the ways that she's addressed these types of things really openly, being somebody who, has the biggest cool card on the planet. She's way, way, way up there in that regard. And so to have models like her, and so many others now, we really are getting to a point where they're more open about these issues. They're more open about it not being cool to bully people. It's not cool to mistreat people, to be manipulative and abusive. And, there's more and more. We have a long way to go, a just tremendously long way to go. But the fact that we're even having this discussion, I don't know where I stand on the cool card scale, but I do know that I get to model behavior. And so that's, one place. It's one place where if we have any kind of a platform, that's where it starts to me. And I think that setting those norms in ways that reinforce kindness as being something that is desirable and valuable, and that is not just good for other people, but also good for you.
And during a time of crisis, a global pandemic, doing something positive for someone else is mutually beneficial. But if you or someone you know is struggling and facing hopelessness, how do you rebound? Walt believes that it comes down to understanding and embracing your inherent value in the world. It's easier said than done, but when kindness is shown authentically, the needle moves.
I think it's really important for all of us to remember that we're not in it alone. And I think that one of the most damaging feelings when you're really, really down is feeling like you don't have support. You feel really trapped in your thoughts, and you feel like nobody cares. It's a really negative, destructive, dark place to go to, and I think that people understanding that we do care, and that your value isn't linked to performance and things like that. Your value is intrinsic, in being alive. I think that's a start, but it's hard. It's hard to have some guy, me, saying, you matter, and really have it sink in, right? And I think that's where we have the opportunity to influence people's lives by showing people that they matter, not just me saying it, in an interview, but me showing the people around me that they matter to me, and that they're loved and cared for and valued. To me, that's the way that we kind of infuse kindness, back into the world. I think it's really hard to do anything, get anything done that is of great consequence, without kind of showing it rather than just telling it.
Right. And so how do you show it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it comes down to people in a moment of frustration, or a moment of really being low. I think of praise. This is it's not quite as deep. It's a little bit more surface level, but it's I think it's applicable. That when you praise somebody, you're essentially telling them in a way that their value is linked to the act that you're praising them for. And when you admonish people, the opposite is true. And I think that when you think about kindness and showing somebody that you care about them, do you only show them that you care about them when it's beneficial to you? Because the covert message in the praising or being there for people when things are great is that you only value them when they're at their heights. And I think that being there for people when they're really hard to be around, when and I know that the way that I feel kindness the most powerfpowerfully is when I can't imagine anyone would want to be around me, and my friends, they don't even bat an eyelash. They're not bothered. They're like, we know who you are at your core, and I think so being there for people at low points is one way to do it. It's one way to show kindness. It's to show that you care and that you value somebody, because I know in my case, I can't speak for other people, but when I'm down, I don't feel valuable, and those feelings kind of cascade into a much deeper feeling of worthlessness. And so for somebody to stand by me in those times and show me that they value me, I think that's one really good way to do it.
I want to thank Walt Hopkins for bravely telling his story, getting into some semantic discussions with me, and most importantly, providing young people around the world with the message that they do indeed matter. Personal value isn't based solely on performance, and that's coming from someone who works in professional sports. While the WNBA season is currently on hold due to the coronavirus, the hope is that you can watch Walt and his New York Liberty play in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center sometime soon.
You're listening to Channel Kindness Radio.